Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar on finance transformation. My name is Ria Caldera, and I'll be your host for today's session. I'll quickly introduce myself, and then we can bring on the incredibly accomplished speakers that we have lined up for today. So, I've spent the last 6 years at global SaaS companies creating solutions for hedge funds, e commerce aggregators, and most recently, optimizing payments for enterprises with Global PayX. My background is in finance and accounting with an MBA degree from the University of Oxford. During this webinar, we'll be discussing how organizations can transform their finance functions to keep up with the changing business landscape. We'll take a closer look at how our keynote speaker spearheaded Bridgestone's accounts receivable automation initiative to unlock savings and efficiency. If you have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to pop them in the chat and we'll address as many as we can during the Q&A session. As we all know, finance plays a critical role in any organization, from managing financial transactions to providing key insights that inform business decisions. And nobody knows it more than a CFO. So please welcome Jyotsna Sharma, CFO and Information Technology Head at Bridgestone India. She comes with over 2 decades of experience across large manufacturing giants including Sandvik, CII Godrej, and Orient Cement, with a proven track record of driving growth and transformation. Jyotsna is a true visionary when it comes to cash management and has been recognized for her contributions. She was awarded the overall winner of the Adam Smith Awards Asia 2022 Woman of the Year and has led by example in creating and nurturing structures that support diversity throughout her career. We also have with us Mr. Narayan Ramamurthy, who goes by Naru, the Chief Revenue Officer at Global PayX, bringing with him over 2 decades of experience scaling businesses across US, UK, India, GCC, Africa, Australia, a truly global citizen. He has held leadership roles in industries ranging from payments, banking and financial services, and retail and technology across Wipro, Tesco, Thomson Reuters, and Emphasis. Please join me in welcoming Jyotsna and Naru. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ria, and good morning to the audience out there.
So, Jyotsna, let's kick it off. You've been at the forefront of change throughout your career. Can you give us a little bit of insight into how you go about identifying which opportunities are worth pursuing when, and what factors do you take into account?
Sure, Ria. Ria, as you said, over the 2 decades that I have been in the profession, I have seen changes on all fronts. I have seen technology changes where we started with totaling machines, typewriters, calculators, desktops, and now we have laptops moving from Excel to RPA and BI. And on the other front, we have seen business models changing from basically selling a product to selling product in various forms as a service and so forth. Now, when you see this types of changes happening, it certainly comes with two other most important changes, which are regulatory changes on front of taxations, on front of exports, imports. And the other important changes to tighten up all of this comes in the accounting standards change. So your accounting principles get modified and so on and so forth. So it's extremely important as a CFO. It's not just about numbers. It's about plethora of things that are transitioning from a future perspective. So you have to keep your vision not just towards compiling day-to-day numbers and talking about what the business performance is, but being ahead of the curve to visualize the changes which are going to come ahead and be prepared for it to be faced very conveniently.
So keeping your eye on what's on the horizon before it's an issue to deal with. And
Absolutely.
with you at its helm, the organization deployed a solution for 4,000 plus dealers to view invoices, make payments, and post back to the ERP. So could you give us a little bit of insight about what are the challenges in terms of accounts receivable that were being faced, and what was the tipping point to push it to the top of your agenda as a CFO?
Yeah, if you see, for any organization, profit and loss is always a focus, but they generally tend to miss out the focus on balance sheet. And within the balance sheet, if you see, inventory and payables is within the organization control, but receivables is the one which is externally controlled. And that is extremely important to get your focus on the receivables. Now, most of the organizations which are, let's say, automotive or FMCGs have a huge network of B2B or B2C dealers. So they have anything ranging from 2,000 to 10,000 dealers. And to be able to effectively manage your receivable becomes extremely important. Then, if you see an era of competition, performance pressures, incentive pressures, it is obvious that accounts receivable would be at risk. Uh, Within these, all the parameters that we have to balance out at the end of the day. You need sales, but you need receivables because no sale is complete without receivables. And it is but natural that the same sales teams would be pushed to do some things taking risk. Now, to what extent that risk should be taken becomes extremely important. And that is what the CFO plays an extremely important role as a management person to be able to drive uh, technology to make sure that the risks are restricted, the processes are controlled, and the systems are defined when you do your receivables or selling actions.
And as you're mentioning, sometimes you identify what could be the problem areas, where is the risk, what's the solution to be deployed, but getting that consensus can still be very challenging. And could you walk us through, like for the emerging leaders in our audience, how can we go about getting that internal buy-in and cutting through red tape?
Sure. Certainly, yeah. If you, as I said, that when you're doing any change, change is resisted, whether it is good or bad. Uh, from the organizations that I have learned, first important is Genba visits. That is the ground reality. Go and visit the people who are going to be impacted. Get it from them. What is it that they need? So, very important while making any dramatic changes to the external is to understand the person who's going to get impacted. That's what drives the change. Also, in that process, build up the confidence that the changes are to meet your requirements and to ease of doing business. Uh, Collate as many inputs as possible from the market, from the field. Build your products to be able to address those needs. Then you can have a plethora of other things. But in addition to the external world, it's extremely important to gain confidence of your internal sales teams. That is a customer for us because they are the ones who are going to drive the external environment. So, involvement of the sales teams right from the beginning to building the product is extremely important. But when all of that is done, and it does take time and patience, it's extremely important to get involved these two stakeholders and train them over a period of time. So consistent connect and training is extremely important to drive the change. Hand holding post implementation becomes even more important because once you have rolled out, the you have to be sure that's not going to fall flat.
Yeah.
And it's extremely important to double hold hand once the changes are done. So I think this change in a big environment of external dealers, there's going to be resistance. There would be an 80-20 ratio. And you have to pick up your best bets and move ahead with all the changes to drive.
Perfect. So many nuggets of information over there. See what's happening on the ground, contextualize it to your problem areas, and really build champions within your, for example, within your sales teams. Um, and Naru, one question to you is: could you give us a little of a flavor of what was the solution that was deployed and which processes were automated as a result?
Sure. So let me explain the space. The space is called EIPP, Electronic Invoice Presentment and Payment. In simple words, it's creation of a customer portal, right, for your dealer distributors and other B2B customers to actually interact with you. So your AR is the AP for those customers. So that's what we are trying to streamline and automate here. Now, what are the steps involved? The first step is really integrating to your ERP in order to both extract the customer master and also the outstanding invoices, credit notes, and debit notes called the outstanding ledger. Right? Step two is to configure, and Jyotsna was mentioning this, the accounting rules keep changing, right? So there is a need to configure these accounting rules on the platform and keep evolving it as the rules kind of change. For example, in India, as you all know, TDS, TCS, those kind of rules have kept, evolving and changing. Some other examples are things like deductions, right? So in many of your industries, in addition to TDS, your customers will be having other types of deductions like goods short supplied, goods returned, PO to invoice mismatch, all of that. So essentially configuring all of that on the platform. Step three is enabling payments, right? So today, one of the biggest challenges in digitizing B2B payments is there is no interface, right? When you're trying to make a utility bill payment as a consumer, there is an interface, right? A Paytm app or a banking app or whatever. But in B2B, that interface is not there. That's what we are trying to enable, right? So whether it is ACH, NEFT, RTGS, cards, UPI, whatnot, right? Enabling an interface for your customers to be able to pay. Once this is done, your customers can then log in either on a mobile app or a web app. They can view invoices, they can make payments, they can make deductions, they can view payment statuses, they can view statements. So anything they were trying to do manually, physically, right, with your sales teams or your ER teams is now digital, right, digitally available to them. And lastly, once they do all of this entire context is taken and automatically accounted for back into your ERP. So that's broadly the space, and that's the solution that's been implemented, right, in Bridgestone's case and a few other customers of ours in India.
And could you give us a flavor for the kind of complexities for this deployment and what was that implementation journey like?
Sure. So the biggest complexity in an EIPP or a customer portal implementation by far is the ERP integration, right? Especially for large enterprises such as Bridgestone and the the MNCs and listed companies, etc. in India. This integration can have different avatars or flavors. It can be a file based on a batch basis. It can be an API on a semi-real time or a real-time basis. So that really was a huge challenge. And Jyotsna kept challenging us, saying, hey, from a couple of hours a day kind of updates or accounting into the ERP, she kind of pushed us all the way to seconds and minutes kind of real-time updates into the ERP. So that was one big challenge. The second challenge is some of the other technologies and tools involved. For example, single sign-on, right, to the organization single sign-on policies. For example, the payment rails, right? So each corporate may want to have a particular bank as their ACH clearing bank. They may have a particular preference for a payment gateway, so on and so forth. So there is a need to kind of, bring that onto the platform from a payments perspective. And there could be other systems, right, involved. For example, where are the invoices, the PDFs, right, kept? Is it on SharePoint? Is it on some other data structure wherein it needs to be pulled, associated to the ERP data so that, your end customer can also view the details of the invoice through the same interface. So technology integration is one of the key challenges. The second is, the extent of accounting rules, configurations, etc. Let me give you, again, use a couple of examples right here. So, for example, companies like Bridgestone would have multiple lines of businesses, and there could be rules saying a credit note of one line of business cannot be applied towards the payment of an invoice of a different line of business. It looks very straightforward, but these are fairly sophisticated configurations that have to be done on our platform. Okay, so that was broadly point number two. And point number three is the adoption. Okay, adoption both internally and externally, as Jyotsna was kind of saying, right? It needs to be right the first time, because imagine your first, set of anchor dealer distributors. They have to have a terrific experience because they really become the champions. They really become the marketing sparks for other dealer distributors to kind of adopt into the system. So the need was for having a robust support for ensuring there is uptime, etc., 24/7, so on and so forth. These were the three big challenges in the implementation.
Perfect, Naru. I think that gives an overview of like what space this is, what processes have been automated, and what's the complexity specific to this large implementation. And coming to you, Jyotsna, I think as Naru was mentioning, in addition to this being a large change management across technology, finance, and sales internal to the organization, success is largely dependent on the adoption by the dealer distributor network, which is completely external. So, what were the key aspects that you implemented to drive this adoption? And were there any metrics that you observed over here?
Coming on to the question, what was it that we did differently? Basically, to run any such type of a program, you need to show the value into it. without impacting business, without impacting your brand. And that's precisely what we did, to be able to show what would be the impact on net working capital, not only for Bridgestone, but how dealers could churn their capital at a faster pace to earn more money. That was one of the core to drive this particular project. But beyond that, it was extremely important to see what is progressing in the market. There are competition like Apollo, Seat, and other companies who also have been driving efficient working capital drive. And it is extremely important for us to internally be able to see how a competition is driving technology for the benefit of its customers as well as for the organization. That was the second aspect that we certainly kept onto the frame, because convincing the salespeople is extremely important for us. And third, as we said, we really did a point-to-point working as to how dealers could earn a 2% point higher profit out of this entire activity. Beyond that, efficiency, reduction of manpower, quick data transition for being able to be effectively using data at both ends have been the drivers for this particular project. This has also enabled our sales team to free a lot of their time from discussions which are not required to be done with the dealers, and they can be resolved much more before, and instead have a healthy product and volume discussion rather than the receivables discussion. So there have been a lot of these sorts of drivers when we define this product, and we value added, as Naru mentioned. We really improvised the product over a period of time, taking in a lot of inputs from outside, and made it one of the best products, which is really liked by our dealers as well as the salespeople today.
Ria, if I may chip in, right? So typically, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Jyotsna.
I'm sorry, I will need to walk out. I'm extremely sorry, but I have to walk out now. It's
no problems. Thank you, Jyotsna.
Yeah.
Thanks for being there.
Thanks everybody, and really enjoyed this talk.
Thank you, Jyotsna.
Thank you. Thanks.
So just to add on to what Jyotsna mentioned, right? So very often, as people try to make a business case for something like this, it is looked at from an internal FTE time optimization perspective, right? Which is definitely there, because Jyotsna mentioned, for example, sales teams spend approximately 20% of their time in collections. This is based on data we have collected across, different industry sectors, etc. Now, why do they do that, right? The reason they do that is because there is a data that comes from the finance team in an Excel or an email or whatever. They then have to kind of take that, print it out, go to the customer, say, why have you not paid invoice 1, invoice 7, invoice 8, so on and so forth, right? All of that now is available even to the sales team through an app, right? Completely real time. So all of that kind of, from 20%, it comes down to 5% and lower. So there is definitely an internal business case. But the key really is, what is the external business case? What's in it for the distributor, dealer, customer, right? That's where Jyotsna kind of mentioned the couple of percentage points enhancement to them, right? From a revenue perspective. Now, why does that happen? So let's take, again, an example, right? So let's say it's a 30-day credit cycle that you have for your dealer. Now, let's say the dealer paid on the 30th day. Okay. In existing manual processes, it could take anywhere from a day to 5 days to apply that payment, to decipher that payment, saying what deductions were done, which invoices were paid, and to account for that into your ERP. Only once that accounting happens does the credit get unlocked. Okay, so the orders which the distributor can place, the dealer can place for, is kind of delayed by that much time. Now, because of having this completely digital and real time, right, as soon as the payment is done by a dealer, it gets applied, right, into your ERP, gets accounted for in your ERP. So literally in the next 5 minutes, 10 minutes, the dealer can place the next set of orders. So that's the way there is a huge, uplift in revenue cycle, not only for you as the seller, but also, tremendous business for the buyers. So that's the kind of stuff which happens. And that's what has to be explained to your customer base to ensure adoption happens.
Perfect, Naru. And this seems to be very modularized. But in terms of technical integration, from that perspective, are there any challenges or anything to look out for? I think Naru's internet might be a little poor. Let's just give him a minute and then we can go back to that question. And in the meantime, let's just take a look at some of the questions that we've received from our audience. Sounds like an impressive implementation. What do Global PX's typical clients look like? So apart from Bridgestone, which other clients has Global PX done some of these major implementations? I think we can see a segmentation of whether it's a company in the same bracket as Bridgestone, or do we also do smaller implementations? So I think that Naru can answer that, and what makes us different compared to the other players in the market. And specific stakeholders who are resistant to change. So as Jyotsna ma'am mentioned during the webinar, if there's any stakeholders like the sales team, creating metrics for them and then tracking them post deployment is really important to get that change on the ground. Hi, Naru. I think.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Perfect.
Okay. I could hear everything, and apologies, I'm not sure what the issue here is. But anyway, answering the first question, right, in terms of customers or customer segments, well, anywhere where there is an AR automation requirement, any industry, okay, whether the challenge is you want to reduce DSOs, you want to enable a fantastic experience for your customers to be able to view and pay invoices, whether you want to enhance your revenue cycle, the example which I gave from a credit kind of perspective. So we are now live across industries in FMCG, CPG, Bridgestone like companies in auto manufacturing, tires, medical equipment, lenses, so pharmaceuticals. So this is applicable across a whole range of industries. And if you go to our website, you will get a view of the types of customers, right, we kind of work with. We are happy exploring both large enterprises, let's say 1,000 crores and above, and we also now have a mid-market product for companies in the 50 crores to 1,000 crores, right, kind of range. So from a business segment perspective, we are the product is ready and has been deployed in several of these industries. What is your second question? What is the second question, Ria?
The question was from an integration or technology perspective. I think you were beginning to tell us about how the ERP is the 100-pound gorilla in the room. So what are the challenges and things to watch out for in these kind of implementations?
Sure. So I don't know where I kind of got cut off, but see, the actual integration to the ERP is a solved problem. Okay. So whether it's file-based, API-based, adapters to SAP, Oracle, or whatnot, right? The challenge really is the internal organization approvals. For example, if it's an MNC company, they may need to be approvals from HQ, et cetera, right? So getting that approval, getting the technology integration architecture finalized and approved internally within the company, right? Having the necessary infrastructure from a QA, UAT, go live, right, or production deployment perspective. That really is the single most time consuming aspect of this integration or of this deployment. Otherwise, we are talking of a few days to kind of go live. Okay. I believe there was another question in terms of what are the internal stakeholder, external stakeholder challenges, right? Yeah. And Jyotsna did mention a little bit of that in terms of saying for an initiative of this nature, it's very important to co-opt the sales team. Okay, because it's the sales team that manages the relationships with your dealer distributor or with your customer segments, right? Now, how can you do that? Bring them, into this change management from day one, right? Make it a managed initiative between finance and sales. That's point number one. Two is define very clear KPIs for the sales organization. Explain the so what it's for them and also for their customers, and have clear KPIs. So that's in terms of internal. Now, from an external perspective, right, in addition to all that we spoke about, saying ensuring there is support available, ensuring the experience is fantastic, right, for the distributors, dealers to interact with a system like this. The other thing which many of our customers have done is actually incentivize the distributors, the customers, the dealers, to adopt this platform via actually giving revenue incentives for, let's say, 1 month, 3 months, in order to kind of pay through this particular platform, right? So many of our customers have also done that in order to kind of build and start and build adoption from an external perspective.
So Naru, that's something that the corporate sets as a goal. Is there anything that Global PayX does to like support that initiative?
Oh, absolutely. So from a global PayX perspective, we have an operations and marketing team that helps in a few ways, right? One is we are happy to kind of create collateral in terms of what's in it for sales, what's in it for the distributors. These could be YouTube videos, these could be PDFs, presentations, and whatnot. So that's point number one. Point number two is we do train the trainer sessions to the sales teams. And in exceptional cases, we are also willing to do that for the first set of early adopters from a dealer distributor segment. Again, using the tool is super simple, but people still want to be kind of, trained and coaxed and explained as to why this is kind of important. So we do those training sessions. And the last is support. Okay, so ensuring that there is a very robust level 1, level 2, level 3 support for all kinds of queries, right? There could be self-help FAQs, but if anybody wants to understand, for example, my password is locked, how do I unlock, right? Things as simple as that needs to be supported real time, because when somebody is trying to make a payment, they want a seamless experience, right? Imagine you're trying to make a utility payment today and you can't make it, right? You are frustrated. We want to ensure that frustration is not there, and we do everything possible to ensure that's not there.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everyone. I think that's all the time that we have for today's session. And thank you, Naru, Jyotsna, for being so generous with your time. It's been a full journey on how to identify change opportunities, whether that's in the AR or AP space, how to drive that change through, get that internal and external consensus, and measure and realize value to really see results. So thank you for joining our session, and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you so much.